What internet marketing expert should you spend your valuable time listening to? Listen to someone who has over 20 years of web marketing experience and hundreds of website marketing success stories. That man is Aaron Sparks from Site Strategics. And this is Edge of the Web Radio.
We're talking about issues in education in Indiana, and we are honored to be able to have a number of superintendents from the state of Indiana. We want to welcome back to the show Dr. Jeffrey Butts. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. And Dr. Scott Hambeck, as well as Dr. Jeffrey Hedricks. They're on the phone.
Thanks, Aaron. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
And if you could introduce yourselves, what districts do you actually represent real quick in the state of Indiana?
Sure. Jeff Butts, Superintendent of the Metropolitan School District of Wayne Township. We're located in Marion County on the west side of Indianapolis.
And Dr. Scott Hambeck.
Yeah, I represent Tippecanoe School Corporation. We make a donut around the city of Lafayette, and so we have a two high school district, McCutcheon High School, Harrison High School, and we serve approximately 13,000 students across 437 square miles of rural Tippecanoe County.
There you are. And Dr. Hedricks?
Yes, I am up in the school town of Munster. We're about 25 minutes from downtown Chicago in northwest Indiana. A beautiful spot to live in, and we are a very high-performing school district.
Fantastic. Now, these gentlemen represent the top brass of an organization called the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents. That's IAPSS. And they are actually having a conference in December, 13th, 14th, and 15th. I've asked them here for a couple of reasons. One, to actually showcase that event. And you can hear the show in its entirety. If you didn't catch this segment here, if you're just tuning in, we will have a podcast released on Tuesday. But if you're interested, you can certainly find out more information at the IAPSS.org website. I believe that's the site, right? That's the URL. We're working on it. I better know it. But there's also a couple other issues that we wanted to bring to bear here during this show, and there's a lot of topical things, political things regarding public education that are, well, there's always things happening in public education, but there are some key issues just recently that we wanted to talk about as well. One of them, and it's almost like the third rail sometimes, is ISTEP. And the situation that we find ourselves in Indiana is that ISTEP scores are dropping in light of new tests, and there could be a potential negative impact on schools and communities. Could I tee this up? Can one of you gentlemen actually give us a bit of the insight of what has happened to ISTEP scores or ISTEP testing here as of late?
Well, we've had a little bit of a shift over the last several years, and you mentioned the test scores. So, yes, we have the lowest ISTEP scores really in the history of ISTEP, yet the NAEP test, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, is our Indiana students scored higher than they've ever scored before. As a matter of fact, fourth in the country. So what we've had happen is we've had a shift in academic standards. We've moved from the Indiana academic standards to a Common Core like college and career readiness standards. In that, we've also made a shift to the CTB McGraw-Hill, to the new test from the Indiana academic standards to the college and career readiness standards. In that, some of those standards are calling for our students to have met basic skills and proficiencies that they've not yet had because we've made that shift. And so this year, our teachers not only were working with the new college and career readiness standards, but we're also trying to catch them up for several years of other standards that they did not go through because the standards were different during that time period that they were going through that grade level.
So the immediate gut reaction there's prediction of drop scores, and they're predicting around 65% pass rate, where in 2014 there was 80% pass rate. This is more of a visceral reaction to or projection to something that's anticipated as opposed to...
Some would call it an implementation gap. Really, it's a transition period that we have. And of course, we're taking two different exams that are very different and trying to draw some longitudinal data, which we really can't do well. And then, of course, next year we're moving to a new testing company in Pearson, and so we'll have another exam for the 2016 testing cycle. So we're going to see for a couple of years some transitions as we move through the change in testing companies and as we move move through the shifting to the college and career readiness standards for our students.
So there's going to be a difficult challenge to correlate year to year. So one of the key factors that are coming out of this particular political discussion is how ISTEP scores, as they are, will be affecting different school districts and teachers, right? Now,
well, here in Tippecanoe County, Aaron, we've been trying to prepare our public and including our teachers and our parents regarding these potential drops in scores. And it's been somewhat frustrating to try and explain that to folks, and you have to really go all the way back to the beginning, like Dr. Butts described regarding our transition to these new standards. And it wasn't up until close to Thanksgiving where we at that time didn't even have any preliminary data on how our students were doing from this test that these students took last year. So that's what's caused a lot of the consternation here recently, is that here we are almost halfway into a new school year before we have any of the results that we've been able to analyze from the tests that the students took in the previous school year. So if based on those results there were any adjustments that have needed to be made regarding, curriculum or, instructional strategies, we've not had the benefit of being able to make those adjustments because we haven't been able to view those results.
And I think in the school town of Munster, when we gave the test last year, many of our students were extremely frustrated because some of them were taking this via the computer, and it's a different format of which to select your answers and move them over, and they became very frustrated. It was a very long test, and so the good thing was we didn't have the glitches we had the year or so before where the system wouldn't even work for minutes to hours at a time, and students, especially when you get to the younger students, were totally disengaged by the time when you have too much of a wait time between question after question. So that's been a frustrating part for our students, is the fact that the test has changed, the format, and so we're kind of going to look and see exactly how this impacts us bottom line. But I think the other piece is, as I said initially, we're a high-performing school district. We're used to scoring over 90% on our ISTEP, and our community expects that. So it's going to be probably a public relations nightmare for us to try to explain why our test scores will have gone down.
One of the things, Aaron, I think has been that I've enjoyed watching and enjoyed following, both Dr. Handback and Dr. Hendricks, I know, have sent letters to their communities and sent letters to media sources in their communities to help, as Dr. Handback mentioned, to get the information out, because there's a lot of confusion out there, and even amongst people who are in the profession of education are confused about how this is all playing out and why certain things are happening. And for that to, I think, without a coordinated effort by any state agency, by any state association, superintendents across the state have been communicating a very similar message in their letters, in their discussions with their communities, and that's the key point to that is that our children are performing much higher than this examination is able to show because of the changes that we've had. And how do we know this? Because we see it each and every day, because this assessment is not the only assessment that we give our children. We give our children assessments along the way. We benchmark them. We give them progress monitoring and help them through our assessments to make sure that we are progressing them through the standards without having this data, as Dr. Handback mentioned, until after Thanksgiving, almost to the next testing cycle. And in fact, Dr. Tom Little, superintendent of Perry Township, said it extremely well in his letter that I know has been quoted several times in some of the media sources. If you want to know how your children are doing, ask the person who knows best, and that's their classroom teacher. And I think each one of us would definitely say, without a doubt, our classroom teachers know exactly where our children are, how they're progressing, and what they need in order to become more proficient.
Oh, that's a great summary of the entire point. I mean, in this particular year, you have not just one variable, multiple variables that are changing the lenses of how you can look at the state-sanctioned testing scores. But you're absolutely right. Every teacher has a direct connection to their student, and if a parent wants to know what they can do for their own child, go to the teacher. Don't rely on test scores. Now, you also said, just to finish up here, you said that there have been 200,000 rescore requests happening just this year, and that's more of a public outcry on what they're seeing of their own child's test scores. Correct?
Yeah, definitely. And much like Munster, Indiana, here in Tippecanoe County, we're questioning the entire validity and fairness of the test. I mean.
Right.
If you recall the frenzy that took place, and the state board got together and shortened the length of the test because of a public outcry, so we had schools even within our school district, some taking online, some taking paper pencil, some took only Form 1, some took only Form 2, some did the odd pages, some did the even pages. We had computers freezing up, screen readers that didn't work. Kids being tested at potentially the wrong grade level standard. So there are a whole host of issues that are playing into whether or not we can reliably use this data to provide any meaningful instructional information for our teachers and staff.
Exactly. Basically, it's a big testing whack-a-mole. That's what you've been experiencing here.
Well, Aaron, we need to be honest about this as well. The whole ISTEP assessment process, the fact that we get the data so late, all it really does is give people a snapshot of each district at a certain time of the year, and then we can then compare each other to whomever. But in terms of actual instructional value, it really provides none for the teachers because the data is basically 8 months old to maybe even longer than that in some respects because it comes to us so late in the school year.
So it begs the question.
And I support that statement here, Dr. Hendricks. To me, the richer educational discussion should revolve around the overall purpose of standardized testing. Standardized testing, by definition, was not designed to assign an arbitrary letter grade to a school, let alone be used to measure teacher effectiveness. And yet here we are in Indiana, we're basically holding schools captive, waiting for these test scores, waiting for these school letter grades, finalizing teacher evaluations from the previous school year. We're in the business of providing feedback to children, immediate feedback so that they can make corrections and improve. And yet our adults in this state can't seem to figure out how we can provide this feedback in a more immediate fashion to the schools in case there's changes in directions that need to be made.
Well, even good research states that you have to triangulate the data.
Right.
So to live and die off of one assessment, I think is, as you said, Dr. Hanback, is truly unfair to our teachers, but ultimately unfair to our students, saying you are this spot in time, this is who you are. When the other data that we use, the classroom data, other national data, NWEA data, all kinds of data out there we use tells us something different than just this one assessment.
I think, and I think you're exactly right, both Dr. Hendricks and Dr. Hambeck. And if we're going to sum it up, I think it was very telling at the November State Board of Education meeting when the State Board of Education members approved a committee to come in that was of national experts to tell us whether or not the ISTEP is a good measure.
Right.
And that says it all.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to cover another political issue here regarding technology in education. In the last segment.